Vaccine mandates. Kind of amazing how someone can go from essential worker to an enemy of the state. Wilkow starts now. Welcome to the program. I'm Andrew Wilkow. Democrat vaccine mandates are a threat to public safety, and people will die because of them. You're also going to be denied services that you paid taxes for. And now Joe Biden wants people fired if they don't comply. You know, tossed out like yesterday's trash with no benefits. I'm old enough to remember when the Democrats pretended to support worker rights and actually pretended to believe that walkouts were an effective tool when there was a labor dispute. Under President Joe Biden, we are treating hardworking Americans, including police officers, firefighters, and EMTs. We're treating them worse than bums and non-citizens. It's now take the jab or else. That's right. Do what we say, or else you might be on the street. Oh, what's that? You worked all through the pandemic? You stayed on the job, put your own life at risk? Yeah, and? Oh, you got COVID while protecting your community? Whoop-de-doo. Take the shot. Oh, wow, you had COVID and now you're back with antibodies? Shut your face and roll up your sleeve. This is happening all over the country right now. The thanks people are getting, the ones who did not miss a day of work except maybe to recover, only to return, the thanks they're getting is a threat and ultimatum. Take the vaccine or lose everything. We're doing this to healthcare workers too, healthcare workers. Meanwhile, if you're a bum, a lifelong loser, nothing. You can still get paid by the government to be a bum and lifelong loser. Right now, hundreds of thousands of people in crucial jobs are at risk of losing their jobs and pensions and everything else they worked for because they're refusing the order to take a vaccine that they don't want to take for whatever reason. They don't want to take it. During the darkest days of the pandemic, when millions of people were crippled by fear, in part stoked by the media, millions of other people, we called them essential workers, not only stayed on the job, they continued to do work that was already dangerous on top of the risk of getting COVID. Thousands and thousands of police officers, firefighters, and EMTs, adding in doctors and nurses, kept showing up for work. So many of them got COVID, but then they recovered and again returned to work. The smart people, if there are any in the Democrat Party, know that defund the police is a political loser. And Joe Biden has been around long enough to know that even in his state of mental decline. See, when experienced politicians want to project a positive image during a campaign, you can almost bet their campaigns will orchestrate photo ops with cops and firefighters. Here's President Biden speaking at the 40th annual National Peace Officers Memorial Service.
But here's the part. A lot of the help has to come to police departments. They need help to do better. I want to thank you for being a constructive player in this process. We haven't gotten there yet, but we must get there. Look, there's too much pain. There's too much loss. There's too much at stake for the safety and for the safety of those you serve. It's a hard time to be a police officer in America. So I want to make sure you have the tools to be the partners and the protectors your communities need. That when you look at what your communities need and what you're being asked to do, there are going to be more resources, not fewer resources to help you do your job.
Yeah, it's a tough time to be a cop, huh? Back to blue, right? Not exactly. Here he is on home base CNN with one of our favorite left-wing mouthpieces, Anderson Cooper.
As many as 1 in 3 emergency responders in some cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, right here in Baltimore, are refusing to comply with city vaccine mandates. I'm wondering where you stand on that. Should police officers, emergency responders, be mandated to get vaccines? And if not, should they be Stay at home or let go?
Yes and yes.
That's right, Anderson. Fire their asses. Cut them loose. Deny pensions. This is now trickling down the Democrat ladder. Here's a very sad video of Seattle police officers and firefighters leaving their boots on the steps of City Hall as they walk off the job. You know what's going to be even sadder? When people in Seattle call 911 and there's no one there to answer. That sad reality is going to be the tale of every major Democrat-run city. The Daily Mail reports at least 100 self-proclaimed anarchists tore through Portland, setting dumpsters aflame, smashing windows, and causing $500,000 in damage. But police stood idle because of a new state law that restricts how law enforcement can respond to riots. The city just reached the grim milestone of 1,000 shootings through 2021 in what has been a year of destructive protests, violent street clashes, and a police staffing crisis. Staffing crisis? You mean vaccine mandate crisis. Headline: Oregon COVID-19 vaccine deadline. Schools, hospitals, state prepare to begin losing staff. The deadline has arrived for Oregon executive branch employees and staff in healthcare and school settings to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 or face occupational ramification under Governor Kate Brown's executive order. Legacy Health, for example, has closed the CT mammography and ultrasound services at the Woodburn Health Center. Salem Kaiser is already short more than 3 dozen bus drivers, and the mandate could increase that. When asked about the mandate Friday, Brown said she was sticking to the plan. All right, so fewer officers, shuttering hospital services. That's what Democrats call public safety. You're still going to pay the taxes for all those services, by the way. It's not enough that these cities have returned to a 1970s era crime rate or that they've suffered billions in damage and loss from the BLM Antifa riots of 2020. Now you get all this. And the communist mayor of New York City.
As we did with previous mandates, we will start impact bargaining immediately with all affected unions. And we saw that led us to very good outcomes previously with plans that our workers understood and could make sense of. And I think they were fair. We said, we're not firing people on the spot. We're saying, in the plans that we came up with other unions, we said, please get vaccinated by the deadline. If you do, you continue on your work. If you don't, you're on leave without pay.
Headline: NYC announces vaccine mandate for NYPD FDNY city workers. The new mandate is effective on November 1st to the entire municipal workforce, including all NYPD, FDNY, and DSNY employees. About 69% of NYPD employees and 60% of FDNY workers are vaccinated. The PBA has previously said vaccine is a medical decision that members must make in consultation with their own healthcare providers. So New York City could potentially lose 30% of the police department and 40% of the fire department. Yeah, what a great boost to public safety. Over to Chicago now.
You asked the question of why the lawsuit. Because we believe that the FOP leadership is trying to foment an illegal work stoppage strike, pure and simple. We've laid that out in the materials, and we're not having that. The contract is clear and it's been known for a long time. The police unions are not authorized to strike. It's in their collective bargaining agreement. It's a matter of state law. What we've seen from the Fraternal Order of Police, and particularly the leadership, is a lot of misinformation, a lot of half-truths, and frankly flat-out lies in order to induce an insurrection.
Oh, so everything's an insurrection now. January 6th. I'm back. In a city with weekly double-digit body counts, Chicago can ill afford to be down one officer, let alone a possible third of the department. From the Hill, 2 suburban sheriffs said they would not send their deputies to Chicago to help with potential staffing shortages amid a feud between the mayor and a police union surrounding vaccine mandates. Kane County Sheriff Ron Hain, Democrat, told the Chicago Tribune he did not feel like the onus is on us to go in there in an emergency situation that was created by poor government and a lack of support the officers receive. Similarly, Kendall County Sheriff Dwight Baird, Republican, said he was not willing to put his officers at risk to respond to Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot's self-induced emergency, the Tribune reported. 21 Chicago police officers were placed on no-pay status for refusing to comply with the mandate, but only 67% of officers had submitted their vaccination status. So, the really smart mayor of Chicago thinks that neighboring county taxpayers should pick up the cost of her stupid mandate? Hard no. The crime rate is out of control in this top-to-bottom Democrat-run city, and she's ready to can almost a third of the police department. Don't forget the fire department and EMTs. I mean, here's a Chicago police officer saying, yep, that's it. Might have to lose his job over this.
Tonight, fallout in the city of Chicago.
You are willing to get fired for this?
Yes, I am. I hope I don't, obviously. But, you know, I really believe I'm doing the right thing.
Police Sergeant Rick Nigro says he won't be forced to get a COVID shot, defying the mayor's vaccine mandate that went into effect over the weekend.
There's too much government control in that. You're going to tell me what I'm going to put in my body. That's my choice. And the result is you're going to terminate me?
You know, the left in this country loves the idea of strikes, walkouts, workplace shutdowns. They see it as an effective weapon when workers want to stand up for themselves. That is, unless it's to challenge their authority. You don't do that. You do as you're told. That's final. Pipe down and get back to work. Headline, walkouts and strikes hit hospitals and pandemic hotspots. While the vaccine mandates hospitals recently imposed have triggered some isolated walkouts and strike threats, leaders in the industry say the unrest is mainly fueled by the way the pandemic has exacerbated unacceptable working conditions. It's not fair to blame staff shortages on the vaccination requirements, said President Randy Weingarten with the American Federation of Teachers, which represents tens of thousands of healthcare workers around the country. The lion's share of people willingly got their shots. This unrest is preceded and predated COVID and is to do with terrible pay and working conditions. She's just a left-wing hack. But isolated, it's happening everywhere. During the pandemic, government and private sector healthcare workers were not only treated as heroes, but also our collective moral conscience. Remember this? Healthcare workers took a stand against protesters opposing the coronavirus lockdown in Colorado. They were so excited to cover this, they didn't even bother to check as to whether or not these people were actual healthcare workers or not. I mean, you could buy scrubs, you could buy these scrubs anywhere. Even Halloween, you could get them at any costume store. But the media back then lectured us that healthcare workers were our betters, and we needed to follow their lead. While the media sniffed at people who were trying to legally protest the lockdowns because they were losing their businesses and their jobs. Well, that was then, and this is now. See, now a nurse with antibodies, who's no threat to anyone, who doesn't want the vaccine, isn't a hero. She or he is now the enemy. You know, here's a happy ending. There is a happy ending here. You see, these experienced people aren't being fired for poor performance or for being late. There are plenty of communities where individual rights are still a thing that are ready to offer these people a change of pace. Here's future President of the United States, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, making an offer to people with time on the job.
In Florida, not only are we going to want to protect the law enforcement and all the jobs, we're actually actively working to recruit out-of-state law enforcement because we do have needs in our police and our sheriff's departments. So in the next legislative session, I'm going to hopefully sign legislation that gives a $5,000 bonus to any out-of-state law enforcement that relocates in Florida. So NYPD, Minneapolis, Seattle, if you're not being treated well, we'll treat you better here. You can fill important needs for us, and we'll compensate you as a result.
You're going to see a lot of this. Smaller and growing communities are going to rightly take advantage of this. Same for businesses. From Florida to Alaska. You could be on the beach, be fishing in no time. Talented people will move on to greener pastures and brighter futures, and they will leave behind the Democrat-run cities to their own detriment. But don't worry. See, the elite left. They'll be just fine. There will always be someone there to treat them or answer their 911 call. Not so much for the little people, even though those people paid the taxes for those services. So here's the argument. The jab or the job story will not have a happy ending for so many. The elite left does not care about public safety or even the people who provide it. This is about control and authority. Just because someone works for the government does not make them an elected official's lab rat. Stupid people are making stupid mandates that are going to get other people killed. And it's wrong on every level to fire honest, hardworking people for exercising their right to not take a vaccine that they don't want to take for whatever reason, especially when fully vaccinated people are getting infected and spreading COVID, right? Right? Follow the science. Follow the science unless we're dealing with natural immunity and therapeutics. And again, I'm not personally opposed to the vaccine, but that's me. I only speak for me. Government jobs have always been seen as stable. Millions of people traded away seeking a higher salary for the guarantee of work and a pension. Why? Well, it depends on the job. I mean, police, fire service, EMT, these are jobs people want to do regardless of pay. They aren't getting rich. It's just in their blood. And we do want these crucial people to be paid well, and if injured, to be cared for. Other areas of government work came largely with the promise of not being as affected by the ups and downs of the economy. Government layoffs are a rarity. But the people who clamor for a photo op with essential workers are the ones putting them out of work. And the most disgusting part of all of this is that, we're not deporting people for refusing the jab, right? We're not making the vaccine as a condition of asylum seeking or refugee status. We can't even drug test people on welfare. We're paying able-bodied people not to work and taking nothing away from them. We have a border that's overrun. Illegals are flooding our country. What are we doing to the people that take tough and dangerous jobs? We're taking everything from them and treating them like criminals. Hell, the Democrats treat criminals better. These far-left mayors, governors, and the president all have protective details. The ER will always put them first. They face no risk as they weaken public safety. You, however, that's another story. If you're a leftist living in a crime-ridden, Democrat-run city and your house or apartment catches fire, your kid goes missing, or a relative has a heart attack, you know what? Call the DNC. They'll send someone right over. My next guest is literally the first person I called when the story broke that Alec Baldwin accidentally shot and killed a cinematographer on the set of the movie Rust. Terry Schappert, I've known him forever. He's a retired Army Green Beret and host of the show Hollywood Weapons on the Outdoor Channel, and is an actor in his own right, and he's joining me now. How are you doing?
I'm good, my man. Always good to see you. I mean, I'm not happy to have to talk about something like this to get on the air with you. But before we even start, I mean, I just want people to take a moment and remember that, a family's destroyed. So, yeah. and that sucks. In my line of work as a special forces guy, going to combat and getting shot, it's awful when it happens, and we've lost a lot of guys, but it's not, it's in the realm of possibility of everyday things. And when, you're not supposed to get shot and killed on a movie set. So I can't imagine what they're going through.
Well, look, Alec Baldwin, you know, he provides the easy hot take, right? You can get out there on social media. He has made himself such a detestable figure that there are millions of people that will take any joy in any downturn in his life and career. But I think you and I tried to provide a little grace here, not for him so much, but for our own, you know, our own well-being and our own conscience.
That's right.
But so much has happened since you and I first spoke on SiriusXM Patriot. You have so much experience here, both as an actor, a member of Special Forces, and the host of Hollywood Weapons, where you literally use real guns to do the things that people like Alec Baldwin pretend to do. But we've gotten so much more information. For one, the armorer was apparently kicked off of another set for just randomly discharging a weapon near Nicolas Cage. One of the directors was also fired from another movie for complaints. We know now that the union workers that were on that set had walked off the set out of complaints about their lodging. And Alec Baldwin is actually one of the executive producers. Now, that could just be an honorary title they gave him to get him to sign to the movie, but it could also mean that he's directly involved in decision-making and corner cutting.
Well, yeah, if you're a producer, your job is to produce it, which means you're dealing with a lot of money issues and scheduling and like bringing in all sorts of assets for the production. So when this happens, I sort of look at it the way I look at anything else, like we do in an after-action review on a mission in Special Forces, or I'm a dive instructor, so I look at I read a lot of dive accident reports because I'm not morbid. I think I've joked about this, but I'm not morbid, but I like to learn about when bad things happen so it doesn't happen to me. And in almost every dive accident, you can see in the beginning there's a couple lapses of judgment where someone kind of blew something off, like, hey, you know, the regulator was kind of free-flowing a little bit, but I'm not going that deep. Should be, and then they get in the water, and then some more things happen, and next thing you know, someone's fighting for their life 100 feet underwater, and it goes bad. I think that's kind of what happened with this, too. It's also important to say this. You know, I do host a show, Hollywood Weapons, and our whole purpose is to test real guns. We blow stuff up too, from the movies under as close conditions as we can get it, and also making it very safe for me and everybody around us. So my set isn't really a set when we're doing the gun stuff. It's actually a range because we're firing real bullets and real guns, and so you do that at a range. A movie set or a TV set is not a range. It's a movie or a TV set. And so there's not supposed to be any live ammo there at all, not any bit of it at all. And what seems like to me, and like you said, there's been some things coming out about decisions made and things like that. So first of all, we now know that there was live ammo on set, and some of the crew and maybe even the armorer, who knows who else, was going off during breaks and practicing with cowboy guns and shooting real ammo. Mistake one, right? Because you can mix things up. You can mix up live rounds, blank rounds, dummy rounds. And it also sounds like they were short-staffed. It sounds like the armorer didn't really have control over those guns. And so at some point, that was the problem. And as I told you before, with Larry Zanoff, who's the co-host of my show, he's one of the top armorers in the business. I mean, that dude never not has control of the weapon. So, like, even if I want to touch one because I haven't handled it, I say, hey, Larry, can I pick that up? He will clear it. We'll both, and then I can kind of manipulate and do what I want to do. I don't grab it. It's not playtime. The armorer on set is not your buddy. They may be your friend off, when you're not working, but when they're on set, they have to be like literally, it's overused a lot, but they have to be laser focused on the job. And the biggest thing is safety. You're not dealing with military guys, cops, or very, very, aware, competitive or recreational shooters. You're dealing with actors, and some of them don't know anything about that. That's okay. That's not their job. So this was a cascade of bad decisions, and that's what happened.
Well, the armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, 24 years old. Look, you got to start somewhere in the business, right? I mean, right.
Yeah.
But she had been let go from another set for doing what apparently happened on this set. She randomly fired a prop gun around Nicolas Cage, and Nicolas Cage is like, "What the hell are you doing? You don't just pop off rounds with the actor standing around." So that right there should have been, that should have been a red flag. when you have people who are, like you said, why are you firing the prop guns with live rounds and then bringing them back to set and not clearing them? So it seems like this was a total recipe for disaster. And I take no joy in any of this. But when people in Hollywood give you and me lectures about the Second Amendment and gun control and all these other things, and this sort of thing happens, I mean, I see one of your rescue dogs in the background.
Yeah, that's Larry. I hope he doesn't bark.
No, that's fine.
I rescue senior dogs, and it gets a little crazy. Oh, there's another one getting up. Okay, here we go.
That's fine. That's fine. Natural surroundings. This sort of thing, it's like, don't give us lectures about our Second Amendment rights and gun safety when it seems like you said about your set. You told me on radio that the armor doesn't just go, oh, Terry, you're a Green Beret, you've got experience, take what you want, go practice with it, that he will literally escort you to the range, he will open the case, he will clear the weapon, and he will stand 2 or 3 feet behind you while you practice with that weapon, even though he probably knows in his heart of hearts and in his mind that you're a guy who's been there, done this, you got it, you know your safety. He's still gonna do everything by the book, cross all the T's, dot all the I's.
And I'll always defer to him. Like, I won't let my ego get in the way and go, come on, dude, I've done this a million times. I don't, I was a jump master in the military. So every time before we jump out of planes and do airborne operations, I have to give the briefing. And it's you've heard it a million times, but you hear it every time. And that way something gets into your head where you start understanding the procedures and you're like, oh, I know what to do. And, something else to remember, too. How many action movies, America, we love our action movies and our television shows, right? Like almost all of them have guns in them. And thousands of these things are filmed every year and nothing bad happens because there are very, very effective safety protocols and measures put in place that if adhered to, completely can prevent this from happening. And so if you remember when I talked to you on Patriot, I said, you wait, someone's going to call for like the banning of all guns on set or anything. And it's already been done. Yep. There was a state senator from California that said, wow, we got to make sure no guns that are capable of firing anything are allowed on set. First of all, that'll destroy the industry if you really, really do that.
Or it's just going to guarantee they're going to find foreign locations to shoot, right? I mean, that's a lot of American movies are not made in the USA.
Yeah, we were talking about, one of my buddies was talking about this the other day. Like, they're not going to not work. They're going to go, okay, we're going to go to a state that doesn't make us do this and still follow all of our safety protocols that up till now have had a really pretty amazing safety record, right? Because again, you're not shooting live ammo on a movie set. So that's one thing. Like we see this, it happens all the time with any gun stuff. It happens with anything. There was a car accident. Well, we have to, do this with vehicles. The problem isn't that there aren't safety rules in place or that there isn't laws and procedures. They just weren't adhered to in this case. I think, and guns, the end of a barrel, just look at the end of a barrel of a gun and understand that that's death. And, we used to say this in the military too, complacency kills. And it's whether you're driving, whether you're diving, whether you're jumping out of planes, or whether you're shooting guns, if you get complacent, that's going to bite you in the butt. And, we also talked about this. I carry a concealed weapon. Every day when I come back from the day, I take the weapon. I'll actually, if I'm keeping it near me, it'll be loaded. But I check that gun every day for the status so that I know where the bullet is in that gun. And, we've had accidents. People have been clearing guns. They forget. They just got, I cleared it the other day. Boom, it goes off. So those aren't prop guns on set. Those are real guns that are made that are used as props and if handled the right way with the procedures and all these different rules they have, it's going to go fine. That just didn't happen now. And someone's probably going to go to jail.
I got to leave it here. I'll say this. You and I, many others have given Alec Baldwin a little bit of grace here. I'll draw the line if he tries to use this to his own advantage or make this political about gun control, then the grace will be over. Terry Schappert.
You kind of know he's gonna, though.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Terry Schappert, I got to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to see you, man.
All right.
Have a good one.
All right, side note. How many of you are amazed at just how little responsibility our Attorney General Merrick Garland has for his position? Take a look at this exchange with Congressman Greg Steube from Florida last week.
Just last week on October 14th, a group of extremist environmental and indigenous protesters forced their way into the Department of Interior. They fought with and injured security and police officers, sending some of those officers to the hospital. The extremists violently pushed their way into a restricted government building in an attempt to thwart the work of the Department of Interior. Police arrested at least 55 protesters on site, but others got away. Mr. Garland, do you believe that these environmental extremists who forced their way into the Department of Interior are also domestic terrorists?
I'm not going to be able to reference that specific incident since this is the first I know about it, but I will say that the department does not care.
Well, this is the first that you know about an incident where protesters forced themselves into a federal government building right here in D.C. Like you didn't hear about this at all.
This particular example, it doesn't mean the Justice Department doesn't know about it, but I personally haven't heard about it.
All right, I'll make it a little clearer for you. And most of us are lawyers here, so we use evidence in court. So you got two pictures here. One picture is from January 6th of individuals forcing themselves into the Capitol. This other picture is extremists forcing themselves into the Interior Department. So looking at these pictures, and I know you say you're not aware of this, which blows my mind that you're not aware of violent extremists forcing their way into a department right here in Washington, D.C., into a federal building. But just with these evidence, with these two pictures that you see here of people forcing themselves into a federal building, would you call both of these acts domestic terrorism?
Look, I'm not going to comment about particular matters. This is a matter that...
I'm not asking you to comment on a particular... I'm asking you to comment on these two photos. You have two pictures of individuals forcing themselves into a government building right here in Washington, D.C. And one, you as I laid out, very welcomely call them domestic terrorists, but you're refusing to call groups like this, who commit the same atrocities here in Washington, D.C., domestic terrorists.
One I know the facts of, the other I don't know the facts of.
I love it. He's literally holding up pictures right there, right? Like, here's one, here's the other. Representative Stubbe told me on my SiriusXM Patriot show that literally the Department of the Interior is a 15-minute walk from the Department of Justice where Merrick Garland works. Let me get this straight. He knows everything about January 6th. He knows all the facts. But when left-wing protesters stormed the Department of the Interior, he doesn't know anything. Got it. But wait, there's more. This week, Garland was before the Senate, this time answering questions about that memo that he sent to DOJ employees accusing parents who are speaking out at their kids' curriculum about their kids' curriculum as domestic terrorists. Senator Tom Cotton was, how you say it, fired up.
So you keep citing the school board letter and news reports.
Right.
One of the news reports cited in that letter, which you presumably mean, is from Loudoun County, Virginia.
No, that is not what I was talking about.
Well, you keep citing news reports, and that's the most prominent news report that anyone in America has seen. That refers to Scott Smith, whose 15-year-old daughter was raped. She was raped in a bathroom by a boy wearing girls' clothes, and the Loudoun County School Board covered it up because it would have interfered with their transgendered policy during Pride Month. And that man, Scott Smith, because he went to a school board and tried to defend his daughter's rights, was condemned internationally. Do you apologize to Scott Smith and his 15-year-old daughter, Judge?
Senator, anyone whose child was raped is the most horrific crime I can imagine, and is certainly entitled and protected by the First Amendment to protest to their school board about this.
But he was cited by the School Board Association as a domestic terrorist, which we now know that letter and those reports were the basis for your...
No, Senator,
this is
that's wrong.
Shameful. Judge, this is shameful. This testimony, your directive, your performance is shameful.
That's not...
Thank God you are not on the Supreme Court.
Yes, thank God he's not on the Supreme Court for life. But it is true. Garland did post that offer for parents to call and report one another on the DOJ website, citing the very letter cited by Senator Cotton. So yes, thank God we only have, maybe another 3.5 years of this guy? Supply chain and shortage are words we're hearing a lot right now. We shouldn't be uttering them in a capitalist and free market society. Our next guest recently wrote in Forbes, "There's no supply chain shortage or inflation. There's just central planning Joining me now is John Tamny, director of the FreedomWorks Center for Economic Freedom and the author of the new book, When Politicians Panicked. John, thanks for coming on the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, yeah. Is this not the epitome when we talk about government being the problem? I mean, it was just a couple of years ago. We had $2 a gallon of gas. We had more jobs than there were people to fill them because the economy was expanding. And nobody was talking about coming supply chain shortages. Nobody.
Oh, it's so true, exactly what you say. Who was talking about this in February of 2020? And they weren't, because people were broadly free to produce. Businesses were broadly free to remain open without restriction. And so suddenly you have politicians making choices for workers and businesses, deciding what's essential, what isn't, what can stay open, what cannot. Is it any surprise that you would subsequently have shortages? But let's not blame businesses or supply chains for shortages. Let's blame the imposition of command and control, where economic freedom had at least previously prevailed to a high degree.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg, I don't even like calling him secretary. Buttigieg, can we just say it out loud that he is out of his league here? That, you know, he was seen as this highly intellectual, highly educated, you know, sophisticated guy, you know, with Midwest values and all of that. He basically oversaw bike paths and paving stones in South Bend, Indiana. But he's out there saying, well, this is because demand is up. Demand didn't go anywhere. When we had the shutdowns, people started ordering stuff from Amazon. Millions of people were getting paid not to work. Their demand didn't dwindle. Their incomes might have been altered. Their being on the job, you know, their time in the workforce may have altered. They may have bought leisure shoes instead of work shoes, but demand didn't go anywhere. And for Buttigieg to say that is ridiculous.
Yeah, he's literally saying that, oh yeah, production hates demand. Stop wanting things, which is just so mindless. And it speaks to someone who is out of his league in presuming that he can decree prosperity or an operating supply chain. A supply chain isn't something tangible that you can touch and that you can tinker with. It's the result of billions of workers entering into trillions of economic relationships over years and decades. So to shut it down, as we did to varying degrees, as we did around the world, and pretend that you can just turn it right back on like that, speaks to the conceit of politicians. Their central plan is at heart. They think they can plan good outcomes. No. No one could ever plan something this sophisticated.
Do you think, just politically in the optics, look, politicians use word salads when they're talking about the economy, and it's not to insult. Even intelligent people don't want to wrap their heads around the nuances of economics, right? It's boring stuff. I mean, trying to make an economics talk is just, it's not fun. But if the turkey costs 3 times as much this Thanksgiving and there's not enough presents under the Christmas tree, first of all, I don't want to hear any lectures from the left about superficial consumerism and selfishness and blah, 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 and the rest of the world doesn't live like we do. Well, that's part of, you know, having first world problems. But voters who may not pay attention to the economy so much, if there's not enough under the Christmas tree, they will.
I think there's no doubt they will, and I hear you. This isn't always interesting stuff, but I think in a way it's fascinating. A mere pencil, a lead pencil, is the result of voluminous global cooperation. And so you think about the cooperation involved of producers around the world to create a toy or an airplane or a computer or a car. And suddenly all these connections, all these interconnections of workers around the world were eviscerated by political force. Again, command and control replaced, central planning replaced what we had before. Is it any surprise we have shortages right now? But let's not talk about shortages. Let's talk about how politicians panicked and substituted their central planning for the spontaneous genius of the marketplace. And so let's be very clear about why there will be shortages this Christmas. It has nothing to do with businesses or greed. It has to do with politicians.
And they're in complete denial that a trucker shortage or some of these idiotic regulations in California have anything to do with it. The regulations of truck engines and who can drive and when and how long the ports can be open and paying people not to work. I mean, the idea, there's a difference between a worker shortage because the economy is expanding so fast that it can't keep up, with the demand for labor. It's another thing when you order people off the job and then pay them not to work, even though we've determined now with vaccine rates and other areas, therapeutics, if you will, that it is safe to return to work. We're not all dying in the streets. The blood is not running down the gutters. And yet when these people are forced to answer these questions, they still stick to their ridiculous central planning talking points.
Central planning, why aren't people returning to work? And I agree with you. I hear you. When government is bidding against the private sector for workers, that's going to create shortages. But let's also talk about what our side always talks about, regime uncertainty. When politicians intervene, they create uncertainty, which makes it difficult for people to grow and prosper. Well, so imagine you worked in the restaurant business and your wife worked in the restaurant business. That's usually the case. It's husbands and wives both in that business. Out of nowhere, both your incomes were eviscerated by government fiat. You think you're a little bit reluctant to get back into that field, get back into the service field in general after what they did to you? And so let's never forget, no doubt the interventions were bad in paying people to remain unemployed. But the original sin, let's not take our eyes off the prize, were the lockdowns in the first place that so needlessly destroyed tens of millions of jobs and impaired severely millions of businesses around the U.S.
Well, I have to wrap with this because we only got about 30 seconds, and I think you'll agree that when government is outed at the problem, the government says, look to us for the solution. Well, that would be like saying when you have cancer, and we know you're in an airport, it's okay if someone's coming and going. If you have cancer, the way to solve the cancer is to make the tumor bigger, right? That the government is the problem here, and government's not going to get out of the way for anyone else to solve this problem because government says, look unto us, and millions of people will follow suit. I got to leave it there. John Tamny, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll get you back soon. All right, here we go. Time now for parting shots. And today's parting shot is at squad leader Ilhan Omar, who recently said this.
The reduction in policing currently in our city and the lawlessness that is happening is due to two things. One, the police have chosen to not fulfill their oath of office and to provide the public safety they are owed to the citizens they serve. The second part is that there has to be accountability and someone that is actually taking responsibility for what the police does and doesn't do.
I'm sorry. Wasn't it just last year that this very same congresswoman was marching at the front of the line to defund the police? Right. So you want to disband. You are part of the movement to literally disband the Minneapolis Police Department. Now with the vaccine mandates, some of those officers are walking off the job and the crime is going up, and you want to blame the police department that you wanted to defund and disband. Seriously. Seriously. This is, again, back to the top of the monologue here. This is going to be the horror story of every single one of these top-down Democrat-run cities, and it's going to be a long time before any of this changes. We are right. They are wrong. That's the end of the story. The arguments in this television program cannot be broken. Make sure you catch me on Sirius XM Patriot Channel 125, noon to 3 East, 9 to noon West, from Dallas, Texas. I'm Andrew Wilkow. Thank you for watching Blaze TV.